Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's final session for Mastermind Live 2022. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, this is session 7 of our event. It's called Make It Happen, Applying the Athlete's Mindset to Your Procurement Journey. Now, professional athletes, they represent the top 1% in their sport. While talent definitely takes an athlete a long way, the key differentiator between those that reach the top and those who come close is mindset, the athlete's mindset. And so in this final session of Mastermind Live 2022, I'm delighted to welcome Lou Alexander. Lou is a former NFL and Division I football player, or for our Brits in the audience, American football player, who now works with procurement teams daily as part of his role at ProcurementIQ. And Lou, I've been really fortunate to get to know you over the last 12 months or so. I think every time that I speak to you, I feel like I'm inspired, and I'm ready to run through walls. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today, and thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. And Phil, don't put that much pressure on me, man. I mean, golly, that's a lot of pressure to hold up to, but thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
It's funny, and actually, just before we were starting, we were talking about pre-match nerves and how, before you do sessions like this, you were saying you've spoken 200 times, plus you still have those butterflies at the beginning, and I do too. And that's kind of, I think anything that you go into that is you really are passionate about, you always, because you're wanting to take it, it doesn't matter how many times you've done it before, how much you've trained, there's always that little bit of trepidation before you start.
100%, because at the end of the day, right, you trust the process and you care about it, as you've alluded to earlier. And I think, when you put yourself in a position where you want to add value to whomever you're speaking to, right? That value is only due to the preparation before you actually put yourself in that position to speak. So, if you don't prepare, you don't add that value, then sometimes you feel like, you left that cup kind of empty a little bit. So for me personally, I get so motivated by coming on these with butterflies and then also energy all intertwined into one. So it just creates this big nerve in my stomach. But you know what? Once we get flowing, it's always a beautiful sight, man. It's always great to do it.
So let's get started then. If you could just share a little bit about some of your career and your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny because my career was a little bit unorthodox in a sense, right? And I say this because when I started, obviously playing football post-playing in my playing days, I actually went into it. My mentor thought it was a great idea to go into door-to-door sales, right? I always knew I wanted to do something that was competitive. And so for myself, when my mentor came to me and he said, hey, you're going to go knock on doors and you're going to learn how to build sales acumen. You're going to learn how to cultivate an audience, either if that's, an individual person that is at their home, in a residence, commercial, whatever the case may be. And so I sold roof and windows starting off from the NFL. Now, that was a huge humbling experience for me because I was like, dude, I played in the NFL. So why am I selling roof and windows and knocking on doors? But I was successful at it, right? I made sure that I prepared every single day, and every single door I knocked on, metaphorically, was literally a semblance into what my career would be going forward. And so post selling, roof and windows, I actually went into software as a service space where I was selling enterprise solutions. And selling enterprise solutions was really just dedicated to being a strategic partner to whatever client that I did have. And as that evolved, I got bit by the bug of leadership. And then I wanted to kind of coach people. And I wanted to really just start to cultivate and say, how do I upscale staff internally and also kind of build these coaching attributes that everyone can actually have. And then post that, 4 years ago, I went into the procurement space where now, I'm knee deep in negotiations with certain people, right? I'm knee deep into all the things that procurement brings us. So, I mean, it's been a great journey. And honestly, I'm just looking to continue to evolve at the space as well.
It wasn't on the kind of the narrative that I put together for this show, but there's something you said there I wanted to ask you about. You talked about how you were really interested in leadership. And I wonder, other things that you saw from your coaches, in the professional sports environment that you thought, that you thought would be valuable to bring across to leadership in more of a corporate environment.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing, right, is what we have to differentiate is the difference between coaching and then also being someone that is just a boss, right? A manager that's just going to set tasks for you, right? For me personally, within the motion of coaching, it's about pushing someone to get a result that they thought that they couldn't get before, right? So a lot of great coaches for me, and especially when I played football, we used to have this thing where we used to say, work within the situation. And what that means is you set yourself up for situational things, right? So for us, right, if we're playing on a Friday night, we would practice certain plays and we would run certain things where we knew every single situation. So in football terms, if it's 1st and 10 and I knew I had 10 yards to get a first down, we would practice 5 times in that situation. So when we get to the game, it was easy to put that layer on top of it, and we've already ran it, right? We've already saw ourselves in that situation. Where I think if there's a lot of leaders out here listening, you have to work within the situation, right? Sometimes we put ourselves in these positions and we're reactive in a sense, right? Where if you're not actually trying to position the situation before it actually happens, then are you setting yourself up for success? And that's what every motion that we do. And so our coaches really implemented that into us early on, and to me early on, to show that coaching within a situation is the proper way to do things. So that way, when you are on the field, you're just coming back and you're finding certain tendencies that you're going to enhance your skill sets as you go along. And that motion works in business as well.
That's really interesting, because I think about all the, there's moments in your career, in a professional career, that make or break. It may be, meetings with certain suppliers or certain negotiations. It may be meetings with certain executives within your organization. But the vast majority of times, while we may prepare for those, we don't practice those. And so you're still going in. The first time that you do it is the first time that you've done it. And we don't make the time to actually do the drills, as you said. And you think about how much more prepared we could be. And I'm sure there's a fine line between over preparation and under preparation. But it certainly speaks to me in terms of, I can see the value of that. And it's something that as professionals, because our days are fully booked with meetings all the time, we forgo that and just think, I'll wing it when I show up.
100%, right? I used to always tell folks all the time where, one of the things when I stepped into business, I thought about, well, what was I really good at, right? And I connected my truth to my story, right? And I knew that leadership was something that I was really good at. I knew coaching was something that I was really good at. And so for me personally, I never tried to take on tedious tasks that I knew that I wasn't good at, right? Or I never tried to construct any type of motion where I wanted to immerse myself in a situation that I knew exactly I could navigate properly, right? So I always say delegation is a strategy, right? And so sometimes we forget to delegate certain things. And also that delegation opens up time for us to do the things that we are good at. And that's just in any team community, right? Like, so with sports, for instance, I wasn't a quarterback. I couldn't throw the ball down the field to myself, right? I couldn't do that. So for myself, it was about being selfless, and also how do I protect for the quarterback to actually throw the ball down the field for us to score. So I was delegating my responsibilities, or the responsibility I thought that all of us, we think we have, and we're all generalists and we can solve every problem. I'm delegating the problems that I foresee to someone else that was more suitable to actually put an action plan together to make us successful in that area, right? So I think that's what we have to look at from a preparation perspective, is how are you delegating tedious tasks to now prepare yourself to the things that you're good at, right? And that's how I focus, and that's how I've actually seen success in business as well.
So I'm going to come back to, in a moment, I want to talk more specifically about the athlete's mindset, but we had a couple of questions that come in that I just wanted to jump in, because you alluded to this one just in the last kind of portion of what you were saying there. The question is, how important is the team mindset? Too often on the field of play and on Zoom meetings, there's one person hugging the ball, ...
Yep, 100%. So it's funny, and my team can allude to this, right? There's a process that you put in place when you are a leader, right? And you're the person that's talking all the time. As much as we like to hear ourselves talk and we feel like we are the most valuable folks on the world as leaders, it's not all the time that you should be talking, right? It's not all the time where you should be actually teaching and putting in new actions and things of that nature, right? There's a time where the effort needs to be put on the folks that are actually working underneath you or working for you, right? And so in any team, there's always a captain, right? And that captain leads by example. That captain actually shows you all of those different details and all those different attributes that you need to really structure and streamline a team. He has the voice of the players, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I wanted to know who had the voice for the players. And you have to find that early on. And when you figure that out, you start to pick and choose who is actually running the motion of those conversations. So for me, I used to go into every Friday meeting with my team, and I still do, and I pick someone to run a session. Talk to me about your experience. Talk to me about exactly the advice that you want to give, understanding that you've seen probably a little more than I've done. The reason that I am the coach is because I have a certain skill set of leadership and coaching where it's completely different than the function of a player. So when we revert back to me playing football, it was more so about, well, if the captain's speaking, the coaches need to be quiet, right? And let the captains run the actual team, because the captains are actually going to capture the underlayer surface things that maybe your guys are scared to tell the coach, right? So I think in that Zoom environment, always try to put sessions in play that the captain is running the ship, and necessarily you're the one that's just taking the back seat and actually putting your listening ears on.
Yeah, the captain can be the conduit then to leadership.
100%, because again, he's seen every single situation. Now, he hasn't coached that situation, but he's seen the situation. He's got on a call with suppliers before or partners before, right? And he's negotiate. He had to have some type of technology aptitude to ensure that he was bringing on the right tools, right? There's a certain things that go into it that they've seen. So you have to trust in their process, and that takes time as well, for sure.
So another question that I want to bring in before I ask another one that I have lined up myself is, this came in from an audience member. Do you have a mantra or phrase that you say to yourself in tough moments to kind of help center your thoughts? Absolutely.
For me personally, goes back to development. And I always say, I will, I can, I must, right? And I can't steal that. That's from someone that I subscribe to. His name is Eric Thomas, and he's a great, great motivator, right? And so I've studied great motivators, philosophers, things of that nature. But for one, the I can, I will, I must, it really paints a picture for me of exactly how important this situation is to me, right? And so if I am seeing a tough time in business where there's something that, I can't achieve, or I feel like I'm not achieving, I tell my subconscious that I can achieve it first. And then my conscious actions are actually the things that my subconscious is telling me. See, sometimes we put everything in that frontal lobe and we say we can't, right? But it's the things that are in the exterior where we're saying, okay, you know what? I can actually do this. I can, I will, I must, and I will succeed through this difficult time, because again, we're all immersed into difficult situations, but it's how we respond to it. But it's also those self-fulfilling affirmations that we tell ourselves when we are in that difficult time, where now we can approach it a certain way. So again, for me, is I can, I will, I must. And I have so many people depending on me where I have to make sure that I do it. So that's what I always focus on prior to.
I love it. I can see that going on my screen above my computer after the session. So talk to me about the athlete's mindset then. What do you consider to be the main components of the athlete's mindset?
So to make just out of all of this make sense, and I just want to go back to like my childhood, right? And how my mindset formed, and then how someone can piggyback off of it. So for me, I'm one of 10, right? There was 10 siblings, and I'm the baby of 10 siblings, right? And so for me personally, my entire life was about trying to figure out how to be strategic, but also too how to impress, my siblings. So I always used to use the joke where, taking my older brother clothes to go to school was a strategy, right? But the end result may have not been what I wanted when I got home. And he's seen that I've tore his shoes up and put his shirt on. And anyone that has siblings, they can kind of, reason with me with this. But for me personally, it started early. And the athlete's mindset is just truly constructed by how many questions are you asking to develop and get better, right? Athletes start with development, right? And this transpires in business also, but athletes start with development. From the age you start playing that sport, right? How are you developing mentally? And then the physical components will show up, right? Fortunately for me, I was blessed physically early on. So it was more so about how do I develop the mentality of pushing through hard times when someone does tell me that I'm not good enough, right?
Yeah.
And you have to have thick skin being an athlete. Sometimes we get lost in the sauce of thinking we are the best at whatever we do. And when someone does tell us that we're not the best, how do we respond to it, right? Do we
You're gonna
go
need
back?
that I'm the best to help you overcome some of the, have the confidence to do the things you do.
100%. 100%, right? And like we were mentioning earlier, is that, you know, it's always good to hear that you're the best. It's always good for that confidence, but you can never get too high. You can never get too low, right? And at the end of the day, especially when I was in college, I started to learn that it took more than talent. It took me to actually prepare my skill set to figure out how I can really develop as a great player, because there was people that played ball well before me. So as you're going through your day-to-days and understanding about how are you developing this mindset, it's about understanding your opponent, right? It's about tracking your performances daily, right? What are you doing every single day that's leading you to the performance on game day, right? Whatever discipline that is, we all have a game day. And then also too, it's about how are you cultivating your skill sets and others around you to see that they can rely on you as a dependable asset. See, sometimes we forget that number one thing, right? Athletes don't think selflessly. They can't, because we're in a team environment. Yeah. So it's about how do I gain the respect of the masses first, and then I can continue to develop myself as I am developing the relationships around me. So the athlete's mindset is just a huge conundrum, but it does fall back into the development of self first, and then figuring out how you can allow yourself to be an asset down the line.
So one of the things we've talked about throughout this entire event is, we're on a mission to help 10x the impact of procurement. And that can seem scary. It can seem unattainable. It can seem just unrealistic to folks, because you're setting on a path for a much bigger vision.
Sure.
How, when you're in situations where you're thinking, there is no way that I can do this, or this just seems like, do I have the skill to do this? Do I have the mental capacity to do this? How do you work with yourself to convince yourself that actually this is achievable, but I have to go about it perhaps in a different way?
You have to figure out what is success to you and define that clearly, right? Sometimes we get so lost into defining success for others rather than first taking in success for ourselves, right? So let's just align this with procurement, right? For instance, we know the core competencies of procurement is obviously strategic planning, right? You have technology aptitude, right? You have project planning. You have to have financial acumen. All these things are the huge layer of the responsibilities that fall under procurement. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be great at all of those things, right? You're not going to be good at maybe negotiation or the financial acumen that you need to really talk to your external or internal partners, right? You may not have that. So you have to start to set benchmarks within your own success and figure out how do you leverage your own benchmarks, right? I can't look at someone that plays the same position. We're going back to football, or we're going back to sports in general. I can look at someone that has the same position in me and say, wow, man, he has quicker first step than I do. Or you know what? He's stronger than me, because you know what that does? It starts to isolate or refine my abilities to get the job done. So for me personally, I have to evolve of what my success is first. And then I can get through those tough situations. And then you know what? The other folks, they can have it all, because now how are we truly valuing it? It's not an apples to apples comparison when you're valuing your success over the others, right? Or comparing it. So I always say this, set your own benchmark, because sometimes when we set benchmarks of others, we cap out. We cap ourselves out here, where our benchmark may be here, but we're just not going above and beyond to find it because we're filtering down our benchmark to someone else. Yeah. So that's where you just have to find the alignment of setting your own tone and figuring out what success means to you. And then all the words and affirmations and things that like of that nature that you tell yourself, that's when you start to really be strategic on how you can attack and be successful in your discipline.
So then how would you think about tracking performance to that benchmark? So you've set your benchmark. I know we talked a lot in preparation for today's session about the importance of performance tracking. How can somebody in a corporate environment, set themselves those benchmarks from a learning and development perspective and then track performance against it?
Well, reverse engineer it. Let's take a step back, right? Mm-hmm. First off, define what your process is, right? And anyone that knows me, I'm a very big picture guy, right? But one thing I work on is really constructing what the process looks like now, right? That's me taking my next step. So when I figure out what my process is and where I lack, I understand now how to navigate and set those benchmarks. So one of the things that I do is every single day, I don't let any other task that may come up outweigh the task that I didn't do successfully the day prior, right? That's number one. And then number two, I go back and I ask myself the real question of, did I win today? Did I actually secure the win with my own benchmark, right? Yeah. So if something is thrown on my plate and it's more project management specific, it's about, okay, how am I actually managing this project? Am I getting feedback from others internally, right? Or am I getting successful feedback from others externally? And I'm hard on myself. So for me personally, I'm a more of a extremist in that sense, where I'm more so trying to find perfection, which I know that is something that we can never acquire. But I always try to go with the mindset of understanding what perfection looks like. And so if I see something that's on my plate or on my table and I haven't, really achieved what I wanted to achieve, I'm putting my notification on whatever internal system we have, Slack, Teams, whatever. I'm turning it off on Do Not Disturb because I have a vision of what my benchmark is. So I think sometimes we have to not put ourselves outside of the box of what we're living in currently until we solve what's in the box, right? It's just like Christmas. Everyone wants to tear the gift wrap open what's in the box, and then all of a sudden we go to the next gift. No, we can't do that. Play with the gift in front of you first before you actually go on and figure out what's actually under the tree in addition to that. So you just got to play in that niche first and then figure out all the other systems outside of it.
So we got another great question I want to bring on from the audience. How can the athlete's mindset help you through an injury or in business a mistake or a failure?
Wow. This is a really, really great question. It's funny. I tore my MCL when I was in college. And I thought my life was completely over. I thought football was done. I was never going to see, any type of success when it relates to football. Yeah. And what I didn't realize is that I wasn't depending on my community enough, right? And what I meant by that is the people that wanted to see me succeed, the people that also wanted to help me through the injury. And so sometime in any corporate environment, in business or whatever, the one mistake that we always make is feeling that we can't go to the person to the next of us or to the front of us or to the back of us, right? We don't construct that team around us that's going to help and seek us to have support. I come from a sales environment where obviously a lot of it is individualized when you start off as an individual contributor, right? But in addition to that, there's still people that want to help you and see you succeed. So when I go back to the story of tearing my MCL in college, what helped me was truly having a huge nucleus of folks that said, hey, you can do it, man. You can do it, dude. Don't waste your time thinking that you can't. And that's the same thing that's relative to business. Do you have a mentor? Ask yourself that question. Also, do you have someone internally that's in leadership, C-suite executives, VPs, directors, that's actually telling you that you can do it throughout that metaphorical injury that you are seeing, happen within your day, right? Do you have that nucleus of folks? And if you can't answer that question, then it is hard to really get through that injury within yourself, right? Because you even see it in athletics. When someone's on the ground and they're injured, you have the whole entire team that comes up and help them hop off the field. So who's your guy that's guiding you to help hop you off the field in business? And I think that's what you need to assess first before you can figure out what help you actually need.
Yeah, get your support network. That the comment about a mentor is so important. And I think that when you're younger in your career as well, you are intimidated. So that you often don't go and seek that. And perhaps when we're later in our careers, you're so focused on the work to be done today that you sometimes forget that that's something really powerful that you can do. It's a powerful role that you can play, to be a mentor.
Oh, 100%. My mom used to always tell me early on, she said, the biggest gift and curse that you have is, the gift is you have the knowledge. The curse is that you have the knowledge and you are not seeking to acquire new knowledge, right? And so I take that with me of like, you never can know too much, right? And so it's always that learning attribute and seeking out for guidance from others and never making them feel like they're not as superior to tell you because you've, academically know exactly how to solve a problem. It's more than that. So
I have what may be the last question, just given the time. You talked earlier about teamwork and the importance of building trust with your team. When I think about procurement, we look at our team being, our stakeholders, those that we're seeking to influence, those that we're seeking to work with. When you're in a dressing room or a locker room, there's 20, 30, 40 people in that locker room, depending on the sport. You're always going to get personalities that don't mix. How, as an athlete, do you deal with that and kind of put it to one side? And I think about this in the context of business, because you're always going to have stakeholders that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with, and you're always going to have clashes with. How do you approach trying to still forge a relationship with those that you don't necessarily get on with because you have to for the good of the team?
So you have to think about it in a sense where everyone is not made out to be your friend in life, right? I think sometimes we get so caught up in this space of, I want everyone to like me or to be my friend. Yeah. And what we did in athletics was compartmentalize the friend in the business partner and the teammate, right? Those are in their own compartments. And it's the same thing with business. They're external stakeholders, but how it always goes back to, what is the core value that you're giving and providing to those individuals that are in those compartments? So let's just use a teammate, for instance. How do I be a great teammate, right? Internally, right? Am I being value added when someone may know something about a specific category in procurement and maybe I'm not versed to it? How do I lean on that teammate to show that, man, you know what, I have really great negotiation skills, and you know what, I can help us delegate and really kind of, streamline our process if we collaborate there. You go back to team. I'm a quarterback and you're an offensive lineman. Where how can we work together so I can protect you and you can get 1,000 yards in passing? So you have to really compartmentalize your team and understand exactly what value are you serving in each compartment. And sometimes we put everyone in this huge bubble, in this huge circle, and we're saying it's all one for all. And it's not. Everyone has their own segmented gifts and their segmented value. And also, too, your relationship is going to be different in each and every individual. So in the locker room, I'll be quite frank, 80% of the people I didn't like as the person, right? I mean, that's just to be real, right? Like 80% of you, I didn't like, right? But I was able to put a little layer over that and a shield over that to say, you know what, though, when we cross into those lines and I understand that we have one mission, and that one mission is to understand how we can win and move on to the next opponent and win a championship, you forget about what you don't like about them personally, and you understand their value between the lines. So within any office environment, what is your value between the lines, right? And if it's collaboration, if it's team focus, if it's transparency, if it's all those things within the lines metaphorically of your environment, you're working professionally, then make sure that you're playing between those lines of value and not excluding all the other things that's happening externally.
Yeah. Well, Lou, I love it. Our conversation brings together my two favorite things in procurement and sports. So we could have gone on, I'm sure, for much longer. We're coming to a close. So first of all, I want to thank you, Lou, for joining us and sharing your experiences and all about the athlete's mindset and how we can apply that to our journey to 10x the impact of procurement. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate it, man. Thank you again. And I just want to wrap up for the entire event. I want to thank everybody for joining us for 2022 Mastermind Live. We really appreciate your support. And trust there are things that you can take with you to apply on your journey to 10x the impact of procurement. I want to give a thank you to our sponsors, without whom events like Mastermind Live wouldn't be possible. they invest in the procurement community so that we can make events like this free to practitioners. As a reminder of our sponsors for Mastermind Live, Globality, we're our platinum sponsor, and Oro and Spend HQ, our gold sponsors. And you can check them both out in the exhibition hall in this platform. Now, just as a reminder, all sessions are available to watch again for you as a registrant right now. Just go to the agenda page if you did miss anything. We'll open them up to everybody on October 24th if you have colleagues with whom you believe one or any of our sessions would be of interest to them. Finally, our mission to 10x the impact of procurement is only just beginning. So check out artofprocurement.com/calendar for all of our latest events. We have a number of AOP live webinars, for example, that we're just in the final stages of publishing, and we'll be getting that into our calendar shortly. That's going to cover the rest of 2022. With that said, one last time, I want to thank you all for joining us for Mastermind Live.